So we have our second panel right now on dual use. It's called Opportunities for Nordic Dual Use Companies in the U.S. And since Marcus already gave you the introduction, I'll just do a silly joke to get us started and get the energy up. So why did the dual use technology get invited to the conference? Why? Thank you. Because it definitely could bring something to the table and maybe build the table too. Ba-dum-bum. So it is my pleasure to introduce Maria Brogren. She is the Counselor for Science, Innovation, and Higher Education at the Embassy of Sweden in Washington, D.C., where it must be very interesting to do her job these days. And her mission is to strengthen cooperation between Sweden and the United States on these issues. She has a triple helix background centered around sustainability, energy, climate, as well as research, innovation, policy, and management. So what don't you do? She has a master's in science and a PhD from Uppsala University in Sweden. And I'll hand it over to her for the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Welcome back from the coffee break. I already got this nice introduction, so I will skip that. But I just want to say that I'm very happy to be here at Bifrost Summit. Again, it's my fourth time here, and it's always great to come here and to sort of feel the buzz and have all these great discussions. And I'm very honored today to be the moderator of our next panel, which has the title, Navigating the US Market for Dual-Use Companies. And I think I dare to say that this topic is more relevant than ever, given that both the technological advancement and global tensions seem to accelerate at an unprecedented pace. And as you all can imagine, the US market presents huge opportunities for dual-use companies, offering access to venture capital, public innovation programs, strategic partnerships with both commercial and government entities. However, navigating this landscape requires a deep understanding of the market dynamics, regulatory frameworks, and effective scaling strategies. And this makes it challenging even for US companies to enter the DSR market, a new acronym that I learned on the previous panel. And if you represent a Nordic startup with roots in civilian application, the challenge can seem overwhelming. But today is our lucky day since we have this distinguished panel here, a panel of experts who have offered to share their insights on how dual-use companies can navigate this complex landscape and benefit from the US innovation ecosystem and its support mechanisms for dual-use startups, including how to access funding, customers, and strategic partnerships. And our panelists are Julie Cinnamon, representing Water Season and Lova, Chris Volgan from Ferocity Capital, and Scott Tate from National Security Innovation Catalyst, and Hannah Weber from Hopo Therapeutics. And in order to spend as much as possible of our allotted time, we have 25 minutes in total for this discussion, we have agreed to skip the general introductions. You all have the panelists' impressive bios in the program conference, and I urge you to look at them, but not now. You can do that after the conference. So no bios now, but to kick us off, I have asked the panelists to very briefly, in 1 minute or so, describe their respective role in the dual-use innovation ecosystem to help us understand from which perspective they are coming, so to say. And then we will have a discussion among us. And then, time permitting, it's my ambition to open up for a couple of quick questions from you, so be prepared for that. And now let's get to it. So Julie, I'd like to start with you. What's your role in the dual-use ecosystem?
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I also want to start by saying I'm half Finnish, so the Nordic ecosystem is very close to my heart. My role is really to help startups and founders, whether they're very early stage companies or more mature companies, build out their fundraise and find the right partnerships. So whether that's on the policy side, on investments and co-investments, as well as partnerships for their companies. And we do that across all critical and emerging technology stages.
Thank you. And Chris, what's your role?
Hello, everyone. I think this is a perfect place for you to be. I started in 2018 when I tried to persuade head of German Bundeswehr that we need a defense fund. And back then, everybody said, what, why? I was one of the advisors building NATO fund before it was even there. So during pandemic, we were 6 people, everybody, we're still in touch, good friends. And now I run Fund 2, Ferocity Capital. We invest in dual use. But I focus on biodefense. There's not much discussion about that. And I think there's a huge gap, because if you don't have humans, you don't really have drones, right? Or anything else. We made 11 investments since June. We still have 30 to go.
Hi. They wisely did not give the former sailor one of these mics that could be easily stolen. So, Scott Tate, our initiative is University of California-wide, but we're hosted down at UC San Diego due to our proximity to the forces and the border. It started out as both a tech transition effort, taking stuff out of national labs, warfare centers, and the universities and commercializing it. Also now it works with startups up to 30, 40, 50 billion in valuation, and we have about 8,500 partners across the US, UK, Canada, Australia, Sweden, and Estonia now. I think we've helped raise somewhere on the order of 270 or 280 million for dual-use companies that are trying to break into this market. And so we're essentially a network of networks that helps companies that are in this space navigate it.
Thank you. And Hannah, I saved you for last because you represent a company that is navigating this system. So what's on your agenda these days?
Yes, so Hopo Therapeutics is a biodefense company, so I was very happy to meet Chris a few minutes ago. We are kind of squarely in the dual-use space. We develop drugs that treat heavy metal poisoning. And what that means is really a range from exposure to things like plutonium, uranium, curium, anything that could be accidentally or deliberately exposed to a population. At the same time, we also have a commercial use for public health needs like lead poisoning, arsenic, mercury. There's 1 in 3 children that has lead poisoning in the world today. And so we kind of see this single core technology as being vastly applicable for both a government military use case as well as broader public health. So what our agenda is really to try and find investment partners that can help us move forward. I would say beyond kind of the US military complex. We have a pretty significant government grant from BARDA that we just got at the end of last year to help us advance our R&D on the countermeasures side. And so now we're trying to really build out that commercial use case.
Yes, you're starting from the defense side, so to say.
That's right.
Yeah, interesting. So since we have many Nordic startup companies in the audience, as well as government agencies tasked with assisting these companies, I'd like to ask you about your advice on how the Nordic startups can benefit from the US dual-use ecosystem. How can they access funding? I mean, a lot of questions here, but how can they access funding, customers, and strategic partnerships? And are there any particular programs that you would like to highlight and recommend to them? And what's a good point of entry? I think, Scott, you emailed me and said something about good point of entry, I think, didn't you?
Sure. Well, there are many. I think the first thing they need to decide is what their focus would be. Are they focused primarily on defense with secondary commercial use, or primarily on commercial? That actually changes things. One of the nice things about the defense sector is there's a lot of opportunities for what we call non-dilutive capital. So capital where no equity is exchanged through grants and innovation and whatnot, which can help them show some traction without having to give up much of their company, and also kind of act as a lure to bring in some of the more dilutive capital to prove that they have a use case and a willing customer. There are traditional entry points, which are the formal kind of programs of record or the primes, and now what is happening in real time is this explosion of non-traditional entry points. So we had our representative from Defense Innovation Unit. They're kind of the big dogs. They focus mostly on more mature technologies that are in the market and are already either starting or able to scale. But there's also the National Security Innovation Network, which looks at things as early as still in the research phase. National Security Innovation Capital, which kind of helps companies that are promising bridge that. Each of the services have their own innovation arm now, the NavalX, SAFWorks, SoftWorks. So there's a plethora of entry points. The key really comes down to researching which ones are most suitable to their sector and their technology and their use cases. And I would say don't try to do too many at once. It's better to land and then expand inside the government, particularly in DoD. If you can get somebody who's really interested in what you're doing, they know everybody else that you would want to know across the other services anyway. Get in there, prove it, get landed and established, and then they will help become your advocates inside the system.
Thank you. Julie, do you agree?
Yeah, I would say, to your points, I think the commercial and government procurement process and like the sales pipelines, right, are quite different. And so this is a bridge for any founder, whether you're American or European founder or South American founder, breaking into this market, and that you want to be able to show like where your sales pipeline is. And I think particularly now with the change in administration, I worked across 5 administrations actually, and so there's certain things that are always going to be critical and enduring mission technologies that are always going to be invested in. At the same time, we've seen a lot of unprecedented changes, even in the past week. I see them every day, right? We're all watching, waiting. And so what that, I think, means for the capital markets is that there's going to be more of a swing back towards people having to do the right thing and like pick up where others may have left off, right? And some of these grants not being fulfilled, or some of the USAID programs, for example, that might be funding like social impact startups, for example, that arguably are dual use startups. So in that case, I would say a lot of this is also having a very clear strategy around which funds you want to target at which stage. I think there is a really large appetite for this type of impact investing and dual use investing, whether that's an angel syndicate, depending on where you are, to a very mature fund. And there are a number of funds that, like yours and others, that we're, obviously happy to talk to.
So, Chris.
I think the panel that was here before is your entry point. Heather Richmond from BMMT, she helps organize calls with investors that invest in defense, right? And then you had Derek from Defense Innovation Unit. They put out calls, but it doesn't mean that if you are a small startup out of Nordics that you cannot join a call, right, for DoD. You can partner with a bigger corporation, right? And then if you get funding from a VC that is US-based, they will also help you. So you don't have to do everything yourself.
I've found also in my experience that there are a number of windows that give small companies the opportunity to kind of test a potential target product profile with the ultimate either procurer or funder of that. So in our case, when we were trying to explore a relationship with BARDA had a program called Tech Watch that was an opportunity for us to come in at a quite early stage over the years. And we met with them starting back from 2016, 2017. And start to understand what the needs are. And that relationship built slowly over time and ultimately culminated in a contract in 2024. So it took a while, but what we learned from that experience is that we could do the smaller studies that we got seed funding for from family offices, from dual use investors, and made sure that we were building something that would be ultimately acceptable as a product at the end of the day. So we found that there's actually a lot of appetite for having that kind of conversation pretty early. In addition, we made good use of a lot of conferences that invite any type of commercial entity, one of them being there's a military health systems research conference in Florida every year, where there's tables of the different branches that have innovation units that we can talk to, again, about a target product. So I would say that it's never really too early to start engaging, and that was our experience.
So you are talking about all of these conversations that you had over 6 years' time, is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So did you, was the idea, did you have the same idea, or did you pivot during that time as sort of a result of the conversation?
It was very pivoted. So initially, just to give, I guess, a bit of color on that, we came in with a product that potentially could have been administered IV, and we suggested a commercial use case of removing gadolinium, which is a element that's used in MRI contrast agents that causes some side effects. In our conversations with BARDA, to save a long story, we ended up converting to an oral self-administered pill because that was what they felt was the most applicable in an emergency scenario, and a commercial use case of lead poisoning, which I think really came to light during the Flint, Michigan water crisis back in the 2010s. So it completely evolved, and that was something that we had to continue to work on through those conversations.
But I think that events organized like these ones attract investors like us, right, that invest in companies. I was just talking, and we may invest in, this biodefense startup, and we met just here, right? And if we invest, we bring together RLPs that are Japanese defense corporates, right? So it opens up broader market. And then you also have Saab that has a big base in San Diego, right, where you can reach out. They're very friendly, and they're open for any type of new innovation, mostly in hardware and telecom, right?
Yeah, they're doing some telecom down there. And that's a good point, too, because most of the big U.S. defense primes now have venture capital arms
Right.
that are very willing to talk to people from anywhere, and they can help you identify what your security needs would be, what your, navigate that mess that is the bureaucracy of trying to get into U.S. DoD.
And our experience going to those types of investors is that they need to see that there's some, not necessarily a formal word of intent, but at least some kind of feedback on the product that you've gotten so far. And that's important to go to have that kind of traction when you go talk to those folks.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. I think Heather probably touched a bit on this in the previous panel around like the AUKUS alliance, right? And we talk a lot around the 3 Eyes and the 5 Eyes and NATO, but there is also, it's like everybody that's an ally of the United States like has a need for all of these technologies and programs, and there is a pipeline into those policy conversations and into those funds, whether that's South Korean funds, whether that's Japanese funds, and ensuring that there is like a global wellness, right, and a global resilience arm to the use cases of all of these impact and dual use technologies, which I think is so important.
So if you're a startup, do you have to know about all these, the alliances and politics, or how, or is that where you sort of go somewhere for help?
I would probably say if there is a hub, like I guess Vinnova is, right, I would start there. Or there's, Switzerland has also a hub, so I would start there because they're already connected. They organize events. They know everybody here. But I think that would probably be the best.
And if you're starting from scratch, each of the countries have trade representatives in the U.S. that are highly networked. I mean, we've got probably 20 different countries that have permanent trade reps in San Diego that could help them navigate who to start with.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. I think being in San Francisco is so unique, right? Because each consulate here, like the UK consulate, for example, the head of the consul general is also the UK technology representative to the United States from Her Majesty's government, right? So that is a huge pipeline into the NSEF technologies and their national fund. And so you have all of these elements, and I think everybody on this panel is a resource. Everybody that's spoken today is also a resource.
Yeah, I think Heather helped bring 11 Nordic, 14 Nordic startups, Norwegian startups to San Francisco last year. And we really wanted to invest in one, but it was just taken over by private equity very quickly, right?
So if we sort of come from another angle, so what are common mistakes that you see that startups do that, they should avoid, so to say?
If I can say, so we met with a startup in Japan, that's Sakana AI, and they said, oh, well, we are open AI in Japan. And we're like, okay, well, what is your product? I'm like, we don't have a product yet, but we are Japanese open AI. I'm like, that's not enough, right? You have to have something that is really good and that actually is being used, let's say, by the ecosystem in Nordics, that shows that people want it, there are real results, and US is probably not your first market.
One of the biggest problems we see. One of the biggest problems we see is that they don't understand that their user isn't their customer. They get all excited because the first time they meet an operator, they love the product, and they don't realize that's not the person that can buy it. So they have to start asking for recommendations and helping, map the ecosystem so they can find the actual client, not the the user. It's just, it's a different dynamic than the commercial market. And so they'll get, the second thing would be that they get a little bit optimistic about how fast government funding is gonna come, and sometimes get ahead of their skis and commit to things financially before they actually have that check in the bank from the government, and they can wind up in trouble really fast. So the government might commit to $2 million, but it could be 6 or 7 or 8 months before you see that money. So don't buy anything or commit to anything before you actually have cash in hand.
So speaking about that, I also wanted us to touch upon what government agencies and the organizations that are helping startups, what they can do better or more. I mean, you said that they are already doing a lot, but are there any? Do you have any advice for them, for Vinnova, for example, from Sweden that is here?
I can add, I think one thing that I saw that I felt the U.S. didn't do particularly well, glad this is being recorded, is translating like the true open source requirements to startups and companies so that people could really understand globally, like we're global entrepreneurs, we're all solving problems, how can we like better accomplish that mission? And a lot of the requirements that are being put out and a lot of the problems that need to be solved are being like closely held with when in fact I think most of them are unclassified. And so I think that's an area where opening that bridge really can help foster and bridge innovation.
I would probably suggest that Vinnova has, or will build, or builds, or whatever, very close relationship with DIU, and then again, go back to Heather, BNMT. So for me, it's very easy to jump on a monthly call and then share all the startups on that one call. And then I can cherry pick whichever I want to talk to. And then I always circle back to DIU and I ask, do you have anything in this particular, do you have anything in cyber, right? That's for infrastructure and so on and so on. So it's better to have some congregated data from the VC perspective, right?
I think also in my experience, to whatever extent that some type of expertise, maybe a scientific or an engineering expertise, can be brought on board from the government side. I mean, that's been of great use to us. And I think as a small company that's scrappy with our hiring, we look to our government funding partners as a resource on that side too. And so we've had a great working relationship on the technology side, actually thinking about how to design our next clinical study. And BARDA, our partners, have brought to the table some great expertise there that have helped us plan out things so that we can move fastest and there's not too much disagreement about the next steps.
That is actually a brilliant idea. If you're building your advisory board and you add someone from US that can build a wide network, I mean, that's so easy. Right?
Yeah, and I would add to that too. I think that, especially in this area, the national labs are a great resource, like the Berkeley National, like there's so many areas around like IP and commercialization and just like discussions around some of the research where you can really benefit from that background without actually having to be part of those formal programs. And those are, at the end of the day, government institutions.
Lots of ideas.
Yeah. Yes. So I actually wanted to open up also for questions from the audience. So I will take 2 questions, and please keep them to 1 sentence ending with a question mark.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Very good.
go first.
And if not, I'll take the microphone back.
Yeah. No question.
Don't be shy. No questions. No, then I will hand it back to the panelists to give some closing remarks.
Do we have a question?
Okay.
All right.
Does it work against polonium?
It could work against polonium.
Just asking.
We're looking into it. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would probably say just go to as many events as you can. Right now, like 10 minutes ago, we met, and I'm like, I would like to potentially invest, so why don't you send me the deck, right? So you never know who's going to be there.
It never hurts to put yourself out there.
Right.
And it's a unique market, so don't let a good war or crisis go to waste. Have a go bag packed. Have in the back of your mind, you always have to think. Watch the news, and if something happens where you could demonstrate relevance and efficacy, get there. Find a way to get there. We've got about 35 companies operating in Ukraine today, proving that their stuff works, and that's a wonderful pathway into any other country's military sales process.
Yeah, 2, I think, closing thoughts I would add around, you asked about like advice areas. I think, like anything, defensible IP, right? Like OpenAI in Japan, like not useful. And like, you know, this is not a wrapper. Like what is truly new and what is gonna like establish this market? I think everybody looks at like three things, right? Like team, defensibility of the IP and the product, and the market, and of course the geopolitical dynamics here. And then one thing in my experience working with a lot of Nordic startups, which I've been so grateful to do, our valuations are very different in Europe and in the United States. And so as you're having conversations with US VCs, just make sure that you have a plan in place to answer those types of questions and not be caught off guard, because you may be able to get a better deal than you would in Europe.
Thank you, and thank you to, please join me in thanking the panelists.
Thank you.
And let's thank our moderator as well, Maria.
Thank you. I mean, we could have gone on for an hour more, I think, but yeah.
And I think there was a lot of good takeaways, not just in your industry, but also for other industries about startups trying to enter the US market. And now we're very excited because we have our first round of Nordic startups who are going to pitch for you.
Hello, everyone. At Aviant, we do autonomous last-mile logistics using drones. The company was started at MIT in 2020, and since then, we've done more than 5,000 flights, are one of 2 companies in Europe certified for this, and we currently have a commercial deal with Foodora, the delivery hero of Europe. Now, they do this because current logistics is slow, expensive, and polluting. This is especially true outside the city centers where you cannot make deliveries. Now, drones address this by being faster, cheaper, and greener. For example, outside of Stockholm, you can reach more than 50,000 people who currently don't have a service, and this is more than $5 million in extra revenue for Delivery Hero. The service is live today outside of Stockholm. You're all officially invited to join me. The first delivery is free. Thank you very much.
I'm back. So the internet today is all visual content. It's all images and videos. Monetizing and moderating this visual world is a real challenge because you have to be able to visually recognize content without relying on text. Videntifier has developed the leading technology for visual recognition. It is so accurate and so robust that Interpol and other agencies are using it to fight illegal material, and is so scalable and fast that Meta has used it to check the uploads of 2 billion users. We have now turned this advanced technology into a cloud-based software as a service solution that is highly scalable, and we're ready to take it to market. The technology is already proven with customers, so with the right partner, we are ready to take on the visual world. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christopher, CEO and co-founder of Hive Autonomy. At Hive Autonomy, we built a game-changing solution that transforms industrial machines, any machine that are controlled by human hands, that's not on public roads, into autonomous agents using AI technology. Machines like forklifts, cranes, and construction equipment. Our technology is machine agnostic, brand agnostic, and can be directly integrated with any fleet. Combining software and hardware solutions to create an autonomous system, but still with human in the loop. Our system is already in deployment with major customers, delivering immediate cost savings and paving the way for radical savings and improvements in health and safety. This also lays the groundwork for our ground vision, a generic robotic brain that will pave the way for radical cost reduction across many different fields. Just a week ago, we signed a first contract after we went out of pilot stage, $200 million in annual...
Well done. Thank you so much. Sorry, it's time.
In annual recurring revenue, thank you. And now we're ready to scale and take it to market. Let's talk.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Brett Gardner, and I work for Axnes in North America, and we build dual technology that saves lives. This device here in my hand is a handset transceiver that filters out background noise, even in the noisiest conditions or environments. It's very rugged. You can swim with it, And many of our customers are here on the West Coast. For example, California Highway Patrol, CAL FIRE, Ventura County, you name it, they all operate with our product. This product has been proven over years to save lives. And we do military work as well, and government agencies that use our product. So if you'd like to see a demonstration of our product, I'll be over here at my table later on. Please stop by. Thank you.
All right, well done, guys. Well done. Very impressive. It's hard to keep everything down to a minute. I know I have trouble with that myself. So it is lunchtime now, and you have about an hour. We'll be back here in this room at 1:20. In the meantime, definitely network and go and meet those companies that we just heard pitch, and come back on time, and you'll have more bad jokes from me. That's a promise.